What if Anakin was frozen in carbonite during the Clone Wars? What would happen to the Jedi Order? Would Padme survive? What about Anakin's children? Well, that's what we are going to figure out, so let's get started. Our story begins during the 3rd year of the Clone Wars, around 6 months before the events of Revenge of the Sith. Darth Sidious has just begun preparations to place the Chosen One in carbonite. Originally, his plan was to turn Anakin to the dark side, to use him to overthrow the Republic. However, as the Clone Wars went on, Palpatine realized the Jedi Council had grown closer to Anakin, and he believed the Chosen One was too volatile to risk turning to the dark side.
What?
Therefore, one afternoon, he invites the Chosen One to the basement of 500 Republica, where he ambushes and knocks Anakin unconscious. With the help of bounty hunter Cad Bane, Anakin was placed in carbonite. Sidious smiled. Now he could enact the final stage of his grand plan. 5 years have passed, and the Dark Lord believes it's time to wake up young Anakin Skywalker. He goes back to 500 Republica and begins thawing Anakin's carbonite. The Chosen One wakes as he lays his eyes upon the disheveled face of the Emperor. He immediately recognizes that this man in front of him was Chancellor Palpatine. Sidious tries to speak to him, telling him that he's been asleep in carbonite for 5 years and that much has changed. He says this transition won't be easy, but he will be there every step of the way to help him out. Anakin was full of emotion. He couldn't fully comprehend where he was and was in a state of panic. He pushes past Palpatine and runs for the exit. He made his way onto the streets of Coruscant, turning in every direction as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Clone troopers moved past him, but their armor now bore strange new symbols instead of Republic markings. Massive Imperial banners hung from buildings where Senate insignias once were. TIE fighters roared overhead, and security droids patrolled the streets with civilians keeping their heads down. Everything looked familiar, but something was clearly wrong. As he looked into the distance, he saw the Jedi Temple. Now there was a giant banner that took up the whole length of the temple. Anakin spots a civilian as they walk the streets and asks what happened and where he can find the Jedi. At the word Jedi, the civilian's face becomes consumed by fear and they ran in the opposite direction, not wanting to be seen discussing their kind. Anakin made his way towards the temple, and as he arrived, he entered. Nothing was the same. The once bright cream-colored walls had been replaced by a darker aesthetic. The Jedi statues that filled the Great Hall had been destroyed and replaced entirely by Imperial signia. Anakin didn't know what to make of all this. His mind was racing, but most of all, there were no Jedi in sight. In fact, the entire temple was virtually empty. For all of his 13 years in the Order, he had never seen the temple abandoned. Something was wrong. He goes to the council chambers where he finds the chamber void of seats, but instead a singular throne in the center. Anakin didn't know what to make of this. He fell to his knees, hoping to make sense of what had happened. But as he does this, he hears footsteps behind him as Darth Sidious walks in. Anakin immediately asks what happened, where he is, and why things are so different. Palpatine plays the boy's friend one last time, just like he did when Anakin was growing up. He tells Anakin the Jedi Order is no more. They are traitors and tried to overthrow the Republic. Palpatine removes his hood to reveal scars all over his face. He says Master Windu personally gave him this. Anakin couldn't believe it. He was shocked. The Jedi were supposed to protect the Republic, not try and rule it and harm its elected leader. The clones, Palpatine said, were forced to act against them. One by one, the Jedi were hunted down and killed, and the Order was completely destroyed. As Anakin listened, his mind struggled to accept. The people he had trained with, the masters he trusted, the younglings in the temple, according to Sidious, all of them were dead. It felt unreal, like being told his entire life had been erased while he was asleep. Anakin's mind was all over the place after 5 years in carbonite, and his memory was coming back in pieces. Palpatine tells him the Jedi placed him in carbonite and hid him towards the end of the Clone War, fearing his power and what Anakin might do if he decided to try and take control. Anakin couldn't believe it. As Sidious spoke sympathetically to Anakin, the Chosen One's mind was jolted with the memory of Padme, his wife. Anakin's face dropped as he asked where she was. Palpatine lowered his head. With a heavy heart, he explained that she was dead. Anger and rage swelled within Anakin, but most of all, denial. He didn't believe Palpatine and asked how this was possible, that to him it felt like he saw her mere hours ago. But Palpatine assured him it was 5 years. He performed the tale of how Padme's Naboo J-type star skiff was shot from the sky, and she, along with her children, were lost. He added that this was just another tragedy to add to the Jedi's long list of treacherous acts. Anakin couldn't believe it. He called on the Force as he formed his hand into a pincer movement. Around them, the windows shattered and Anakin screamed as loud as he could manage. His world was destroyed. Tears stream down his face as he tells Palpatine he has nothing. His wife is dead, his children are gone, and everyone he ever cared about is lost. Palpatine consoles Anakin, but inside, his excitement was increasing. Palpatine told Anakin that despite everything he'd lost, his life was not over. The Jedi were gone, Padme was gone, and the galaxy had moved on, but Anakin was still alive, and his power still mattered. He said the dark side was a way to ensure he doesn't lose anything again, to never have the weakness the Jedi instilled in him. Under his guidance, Anakin would no longer be held back or abandoned, and he would never be powerless again. With nothing left in his old life, Palpatine told him this was his chance to become something new, and to make sure his suffering had not been for nothing. Anakin kneels and pledges himself to the dark side, being dubbed Darth Vader. From here, Anakin and Palpatine begin training together in the dark side. Everything had gone according to Palpatine's plan, and he knew he could now forge his perfect apprentice. Over the following months, Palpatine trained Anakin relentlessly, stripping away what remained of the Jedi and rebuilding him through the dark side. He taught him to draw power from anger, grief, and loss, showing him how emotion made the Force stronger, not weaker. Anakin learned a variety of Sith techniques, such as crushing enemies from around the room, bending minds to his will, and most importantly, Force lightning. His lightsaber training became brutal and precise, focused on domination rather than defense, and he quickly surpassed anything he had learned as a Jedi. He was able to unlock his full potential. The ceiling of power that Qui-Gon saw in the young boy all those years ago was finally attained. Vader could choke people across planets, use the Force to sense beings all across the galaxy. At his height, he was no longer bound by the Force, but instead, he controlled the Force to his will, similar to how he did when he was on Mortis. However, the one thing that held Anakin back was his emotional state. In the original timeline, Anakin fell to the dark side through fears of his wife dying, and subsequently, he lost control of his emotions and purged the Jedi Order. This essentially caused him to fall to evil, but in this timeline, Palpatine has pushed Anakin to the dark side in a more sudden way, almost where it's like Anakin has joined the dark side because there isn't any other options available for him to do. Because of this, Anakin wasn't nearly as evil, and his hatred is not as strong. He is still heartbroken and devastated about losing his wife and unborn children, and the fact that Obi-Wan was gone. So grief and guilt hit him like a truck, but hate, that was something Palpatine struggled to instill in the new Sith. As Anakin's training progresses, Palpatine introduces Anakin to the Senate as the new Imperial Enforcer. The entire Senate, and Imperial Galaxy for that matter, were very shocked to see him. This was Anakin Skywalker, the Republic war hero who suddenly went missing at the end of the Clone War. When Anakin was a Jedi, the Republic loved and revered him. He was the poster boy of the Jedi Order. But now Anakin stands before the Senate and delivers a powerful speech where he denounces the old Republic and the Jedi Order and says they were weak and traitors, but that Emperor Palpatine is leading them into a new era of peace and prosperity. The entire arena explodes with applause. As the weeks went on, Palpatine noticed that Anakin's hatred wasn't nearly where it was meant to be. Anakin has a lack of passion, which is one of the core emotions of the Sith. Palpatine realized the Chosen One needed a reason to be angry, a reason to hate the Jedi and his past, and a desire to build a new future. The Dark Lord decides to test the boy. When reports came in that a Jedi was spotted fighting stormtroopers on Corellia, Sidious tasked Anakin with defeating the Jedi and beginning his life as the Imperial Enforcer. Anakin and the Imperial fleet descend on the planet as they begin fighting the rebels. Vader joins the fight, slicing down rebel troopers and searching for the Jedi when he finally locates and approaches. But when he arrived, Vader's heart dropped. The Togruta Jedi turned around to reveal Anakin Skywalker's old apprentice, Ahsoka Tano. She looked at him with disbelief and asked where he had been all this time, telling him the galaxy had needed him and that his disappearance had left everything to fall apart. She questioned why he was standing beside Palpatine now, why he was enforcing the Empire's will, and accused him of betraying everything he once fought for. Anakin stood firm, defending the Emperor, insisting that Palpatine had saved the galaxy from the Jedi, that the Order had been corrupt and traitorous all along. Ahsoka told him he couldn't be more wrong, and as she spoke, Anakin began to see the past through her words. Ahsoka explained the fall of the Jedi from her perspective, speaking as though she was explaining a tale of old. She explained how after Anakin vanished, she returned to help the Jedi search for him, refusing to believe he was gone. But the trail always went cold. Then came the day everything fell apart. She described going to Padme on Coruscant after Palpatine had executed Order 66 and how the Jedi Temple was burning. But when she arrived at Padme's apartment, clones had followed her. Padme told her to run, and as Ahsoka fled, she turned back just in time to see Padme being arrested and placed in handcuffs. That was the last time she saw her. From there, Ahsoka said, she went into hiding, hunted by the Empire, surviving while the Jedi were wiped out. Hearing this, Anakin felt the ground beneath him shift. The story that Palpatine had told him no longer lined up. Padme had not died in the starship explosion. She had been taken alive. As Anakin explained what Palpatine had told him, Ahsoka said that never happened and Palpatine's lying. Anakin felt his anger swell around him. He had been a fool. He tells Ahsoka that Palpatine told him the Jedi placed him in Carbonite, but Tano assured him that wouldn't have been the case and that Palpatine himself would have done it. Ahsoka says he has to search for Padme, that she could still be alive and there's still hope for the galaxy. In this moment, Anakin's fragile hold on the dark side collapsed and he turned back to the light. Ahsoka tells him that people haven't forgotten the Republic of old and the rebellion was formed to fight back. She asks Anakin to join them, but Anakin says he must go back to Palpatine, that only remaining by his side could he find his wife. Ahsoka understood, but the two would keep in touch. Anakin goes back to Coruscant where he tells Palpatine that he killed the Jedi on Corellia. The Emperor sensed a newfound resolve inside Anakin after the mission, and he believed his apprentice was now more firm in the dark side, but he had misinterpreted this resolve. Anakin begins searching for Padme. He goes to the Imperial prison on Coruscant where he gets past the stormtrooper guards with forced persuasion. He goes down the hallway and into the security room where he uses the Imperial clearance codes to access the list of prisoners in the Empire. Anakin searches for Padme, but there's nothing that shows up. He continues to investigate and locates a remote prison fortress built into the mountains of Stygian Prime. This was occupied by the Empire's most high-profile prisoners, and Anakin knew if Padme was kept anywhere, it would be there. He gets his personal TIE fighter and sets course for Stygian Prime. Arriving at the spire, he moves through the prison with speed. He has his senses going to the max, waiting for any false inclination of his old wife. But there was nothing. As he began to go back to his ship, he thought all was lost, until his mind was completely flooded with the feeling of Padme being in a cell to his left. He opened the door, and lying on the bed was his wife, Padme Amidala. Anakin rushed to her side, hardly believing she was real, the two of them frozen for a moment as if the last 5 years collapsed into a single breath. She was alive, but weak, and as he helped her sit up, she confirmed everything Ahsoka had told him. Padme revealed that she had given birth to twins, Luke and Leia, shortly after their arrest, and that Palpatine had taken them from her, claiming they were the heirs to the new Empire. Hearing this, Anakin's rage was boiling, and he wanted nothing more than to destroy Palpatine, but he knew he could not defeat Sidious or the Empire on his own. Padme urged him to contact Bail Organa, someone she trusted to help protect what remained of their family. Anakin agreed. They hugged and kissed one last time, before parting ways once again. Over the following weeks, Padme found Bail Organa and joined the growing rebellion, where she was reunited with Ahsoka. Bail had already begun organizing resistance cells, and with Ahsoka's leadership, the rebellion became more coordinated and disciplined. At the same time, Anakin returned to Coruscant and continued to act as Palpatine's loyal apprentice. In secret, he fed the rebellion detailed intelligence, including Imperial fleet movements, supply routes, prison locations, and weaknesses in a major weapons project. Because of this information, rebel attacks became more effective and costly for the Empire. More systems began to support the rebellion, and it quickly grew into a serious threat. Throughout it all, Anakin remained inside the Empire, hiding in plain sight, waiting. As for Palpatine, he was furious. He couldn't believe the rebellion had grown this powerful in such a short period of time. He needed to decimate them, to ensure they never grew so powerful that they could actually rival him in a battle. Therefore, he ensures that the Death Star, whose laser was reaching completion, was at its highest strength to defeat the rebels. Anakin learns of this, and discovers that Palpatine is traveling to Geonosis to oversee the Death Star's final test. This is the moment. Anakin contacts Padme and says the entire rebellion fleet needs to go to Geonosis, that both Palpatine and the Death Star will be there. If they can destroy both, then the Empire will collapse on itself. When Palpatine leaves, Anakin secretly follows aboard Palpatine's Eclipse Star Destroyer, masking his Force signature so the Dark Lord can't sense him. When they arrive in orbit above Geonosis, Palpatine begins his ceremony for the weapons test. However, before the laser can be fired, Anakin reveals himself and says it's over. As he does this, the entire rebel fleet emerges from hyperspace, with Ahsoka and Padme leading from the bridge of one of the starships. The Emperor's face dropped in rage. He cursed at Anakin, declaring him a failed apprentice and that he was offered all the power in the world, but he was still too weak to accept it. However, as Anakin approached, Palpatine's anger faded almost instantly, replaced by slow, echoing laughter, and Anakin felt a chill run down him as he realized that something was wrong. Confused, Anakin demanded to know what was so amusing, only for Palpatine to calmly explain that Anakin had not ended the war, but delivered the rebellion straight into his hands. He revealed that he uncovered Anakin's betrayal months earlier, the moment Anakin accessed restricted Imperial prison records while searching for Padme. From that point on, Palpatine had watched him closely, tracking every move, every secret transmission, waiting for Anakin to expose the full extent of the rebel leadership. As Palpatine finished speaking, hyperspace ripped open across the sky, and dozens of Star Destroyers emerged, surrounding the rebel fleet from every direction. Panic hit Anakin instantly. He grabbed his comlink and shouted for Padme to retreat, telling her it was a trap and that she had to get out now. Padme's reply came back strained and urgent, telling him they couldn't escape, that multiple tractor beams had locked them in place and the fleet was pinned. Anakin turned just in time to see the Death Star's super laser fire, a blinding beam cutting through space and obliterating one of the rebel capital ships in a single shot. The explosion lit the viewpoint, and Anakin felt his chest tighten as thousands of lives vanished in an instant. Behind him, Palpatine laughed again, igniting his crimson lightsaber and stepping forward. He told Anakin it was over, the rebellion had fallen, and that no matter how powerful the Chosen One had become, he was still standing exactly where Palpatine had always planned. A fierce duel erupts across the bridge of the ship, the clash of red blades filling the air as Anakin fought with everything he had. He drew on desperation, on the need to save Padme and their children, but Palpatine was ready for him, stronger and more controlled than ever. Each exchange pushed Anakin back, his strikes going heavier as Palpatine dismantled his offense piece by piece. With a sudden burst of power, Palpatine tore Anakin's lightsaber from his grasp and hurled him across the room. Anakin hit the ground hard, struggling to rise before being forced to his knees by an invisible grip. Palpatine mocked him, telling him that despite all his power, he had still failed to reach his full potential. Then the lightning came. Blue arcs surged from Palpatine's hands, slamming into Anakin's body as pain tore through him, as screams echoed across the chamber. Palpatine laughed as he tortured him, declaring that he was eternal, that no one could ever defeat him, and that Anakin Skywalker would die, knowing he had lost everything. The lightning intensified, and Anakin felt his strength slipping away, his vision fading as Palpatine's laughter filled the air. Palpatine approached Anakin to finish him off when the Dark Lord hit the floor as Anakin looked around in confusion. But as he looked at the doorway, he saw Padme standing with a blaster in hand and Ahsoka beside her. They had escaped, they had reached him, and in that moment, Anakin realized Palpatine was finally finished. When Anakin asked how they reached him, Padme simply smiled and said she used an old trick from the Clone Wars, remembering a time when she never did things the easy way. With Palpatine dead, the battle quickly turned. The rebel fleet destroyed the Death Star and Imperial resistance collapsed across the system. In the aftermath, the truth of Palpatine's rule was brought before the Senate, and with the Emperor gone, the Senate voted to dissolve the Empire and restore the Republic. Bail Organa was elected Chancellor, tasked with rebuilding what had been lost. Anakin and Padme then returned to Coruscant, where they found Luke and Leia imprisoned within the Imperial Palace, held in chains as trophies of Palpatine's twisted ambition. They freed their children and finally brought their family back together. The four of them left the capital behind, traveling to Naboo with Ahsoka, far from war and politics. Luke and Leia had suffered deeply in their early years, shaped by loss and fear that would stay with them forever. But with both Anakin and Padme by their side, they believed they could give their children something the galaxy never had: peace, love, and a chance at a brighter future. Hey everyone, really quick, for the entire month of January at Fantasy Sabers, we are giving away a free Negotiator Deluxe Saber with every order over $250. This is your chance to get 2 sabers for the price of 1. We have over 100 sabers on offer, and I would strongly encourage you to check this out if you've been wanting your own saber. Thanks again, and I'll leave a link in the description below. If you enjoyed today's video, you must watch What If Anakin Had Visions of Choking Padme and What If Yoda Saved Anakin. If you love Star Wars, then you need a saber. At Fantasy Sabers, we offer sabers from your favorite characters, as well as custom hilts which we have made ourselves. It's such a fun community and has grown my love for Star Wars so much. I'll leave a link in the description, so be sure to check it out.